like motherhood kind of cracks you open, and I think that it kind of allows you to have either have the option of numbing or healing. And I think that the creativity and tapping into what was important to me allowed a lot of healing to happen.
Hi there, Soulful Mama. Welcome to the Soul Care Mom podcast. I'm Catherine Wilde of soulcaremom.com. I'm a mom of 3 amazing kids, a soul care mom coach, and a yoga and meditation teacher. I've helped hundreds of women, and I'm here to help you feel calm and find your unshakable confidence as a mom. If you're ready to stop living in survival mode and you're ready to drop the mom guilt and overwhelm, this podcast is for you. Think of this as a lunch date with a girlfriend. Grab a cup of tea and get cozy. It's time to get honest and vulnerable and shift the traditional mindset around motherhood. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Get ready to grow and feel empowered as a mom. I'm here for you, Mama. Let's get started. Have you ever felt mom guilt? Mom guilt is something that most moms experience sometime on their motherhood journey. And sometimes the feeling of shame and guilt can be overwhelming. If you've ever experienced mom guilt and you're ready to release the guilt and shame that's keeping you from living your best life, you are going to want to tune into this beautiful episode of the Soul Care Mom podcast. Today, I chat with Allison Alexander, a coach and a mama who wears many hats. And we dive into what mom guilt is, how to deal with mom guilt, and she shares the lessons she's learned along the way so you can learn from her experiences, ditch the mom guilt, and thrive. Let's dive in. Hi, Allison. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so you have been on quite a journey and you shared a little bit of your story with me. Would you mind starting us off by giving us a peek into your motherhood journey and some of the lessons you learned along the way?
Oh, sure. I am a mother to a 10-and-a-half-year-old daughter, and then I also am a bonus mom to a 14-year-old stepson. So I started, I had my stepson was in my life before my daughter was. So I had a little bit of a taste of what it was going to be like to have a kiddo around. And then when I had my daughter a few years later, um, having a tiny little infant from the beginning was definitely quite a bit different. And for me, when I had my daughter, I definitely struggled a lot with postpartum depression when I had her, and I really struggled with. I was one of the first people in my friend group to have a kid, so there was a big part of me that was struggling to sort of find my way through and to figure out, who I was. Interestingly enough, I kind of turned to entrepreneurship as a way to, find my footing again. And I started a children's clothing line when my daughter was an infant, and I ran that for 5 years. And then as she got older, she didn't really love the clothes that I was making because they were dresses, and she's kind of really a very active kid. And so I was doing a lot of CrossFit at the time, and I started a fitness apparel brand in 2015 and kind of did that. So for me, motherhood and entrepreneurship and my journey is kind of in that way, I've always been sort of tied together. So that's just a real quick overview.
Yes. Oh, I love that you shared that because sometimes we feel like if we do something outside of being a mom that we're taking that away from our kids, but really giving ourselves that experience of because we are more than just moms, right? There's more parts of us. And when we care for and explore those other parts of ourselves and nurture those other parts of ourselves, the creativity and all those things, the passions that we have, it helps us to show up more fully present when when we're with our kids.
Absolutely. And I feel like motherhood kind of cracks you open. And I think that it kind of allows you to have either have the option of numbing or healing. And I think that the creativity and tapping into what was important to me allowed a lot of healing to happen. So yeah, I think that there are a lot of people who sometimes think that doing something outside of their motherhood could be a negative and could take away from it. But for me, I've actually found the opposite to be true.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. So,
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit about shame and guilt?
Yeah.
I mean, guilt is something that I think is pervasive in mom life. That there's even the term mom guilt, right? That we use, that so many moms use.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think a lot of us feel guilt, but we feel like we're alone in this. Um, and so much of that shame and guilt, I think, comes from, things that we've learned along the way, things that we see and we compare ourselves to, and we sort of set this standard for ourselves and we internalize this, these beliefs that when we fall short of them, we feel like we failed. So we set these unrealistic standards and expectations, and then we're really hard on ourselves when we can't maintain these unrealistic um, standards. There's a quote that I love from Louise Hay where she says, "Remember, you've been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." I love that just blunt reminder.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. Yeah, I think that so often we get caught up in what we think we should be and what we should look like. And for me, should is a really great indicator that you're carrying something that doesn't belong to you. Like you are operating from a belief that is not yours. So whenever I feel myself going into shoulding, it is often a signal for me to look underneath it. What's underneath that? Like why do I feel that? Where does that belief come from? And do I want to hang on to that belief? I think when we start questioning or where these things come from, it gives us an opportunity to decide like, yes, I want to keep this, or no, I want to change this. And so for me, that's been a huge part of my journey is when I find myself, feeling guilty or feeling anything, is not taking my emotions or these feelings as directives and instead considering them as data points in places where I can get curious. I always say that curiosity is my superpower. And and I really believe it. Like if we are allow ourselves to stay curious about why we feel these things, then we can change it. We can get under it. And so that's, I think, really been a huge part of my journey is just to stay curious and explore and to not assume that the way things are is the way that they have to be forever. So,
Yes. Oh, I love so many of the things you just said. So, talking about your how you're feeling as data points, like taking those emotions as data points, is a really great way to look at it. I usually use the word like messages, like your emotions are a messenger system, basically letting you know that something's off or something's great, and keep going in that direction. Um, so it kind of raises red flags for us, like, hey, what we need to be curious, like you said, and then that gentle curiosity helps us to really see what we need and then nurture that in ourselves. I think that's really beautiful.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And it's funny, like mom guilt's also really interesting too, because there's also I was having a conversation with a friend of mine and she was like, do you ever feel guilty about not feeling guilty? And I was like, oh my goodness, it's so true. Like mom guilt is like one of those things that like you feel guilty, like it's like designed. It's another way for women to feel that we have been put into this box of like, well, I don't, if you don't feel guilt, like what's wrong with me? Am I doing it wrong? And for me, at times that has been a struggle because I have worked very hard to not feel that and to like to to not like lean into it. And so at times there have been moments where I'm like, I don't feel guilty for leaving my child. I don't feel guilty, when I had my daughter, I didn't cry when I left her to go back to work. Like I cried because I was happy to be back at work. And then I cried a little bit because I felt guilty for leaving, for not feeling guilty. Like that's bananas to think about.
Yes, I think that's the shoulds coming back in, right?
Yeah,
Like they're telling us that we are supposed to feel this way, and when we don't, even when we feel great, we
yeah,
feel wrong about feeling great. So yeah, I think there's a lot going on there.
there is. And it's funny when what you just said about like we feel guilt about feeling good. I think we as women, a lot of us feel there's a lot of social conditioning around women not feeling good and feeling like if we feel good, we must not be doing being female, right? Like we're doing it wrong because so many of us have been conditioned to put others' needs in front of ourselves. And a lot of us have witnessed our mothers like operate as martyrs. And, there is complexity to looking underneath that for sure.
Yes. I feel like even when we get a compliment, we often say, well, oh, I got this on sale, or, oh, like we
Yeah.
don't just say thank you. Yeah.
Like, oh, this thing I've had forever. Like, it's no big deal. Yeah. I'll do that for sure.
So, okay, I think this leads us beautifully into the topic of self-love. I
Yeah.
feel that there's often this kind of disconnection that happens to most of us early in life, and we begin to suppress our feelings because maybe it wasn't always safe to express them.
Yeah.
And when we create this disconnection from ourselves and our needs, we in effect lose ourselves, right? And it becomes challenging to really love ourselves from this space. So can you walk us through what self-love means to you and how we can begin this journey of reconnecting with and loving ourselves?
Yeah, I love self-love. It is my favorite. And it's true. So for me, self-love kind of, when I think about it, I think that it is so critical because our capacity to love other people is dictated by the amount of love that we're able to give ourselves. And when we say, yes, my needs matter, like, yes, and when we recognize and we treat ourselves like we are our own beloved, it shows up in the rest of our lives. It shows up in the way that we care for others. I mean, when I take care of myself, and over the years it's evolved as what that looks like. Fitness, as I mentioned, well, actually, I sold my fitness company yesterday, but that's a whole nother story. Um, so, but when I started that, it was because after I had my daughter, I was incredibly depressed, and I I was teaching fitness before I had her in a gym, and then after I had her, I had to step away from that. And so I was working out in my basement, and it was just kind of very lonely. And my husband saw that I was just not getting out of this hole, and he signed us up for a CrossFit gym. And he was like, I'm going to go, and then I'll pick her up you'll bring her to me. And we just did that, and we swapped. And that's how I reconnected, and I saw that time as myself. And then I started to, reconnect with my body, reconnect with like loving myself and doing those things, taking that time, letting myself have interest again. And when I did that, I found that like I was able to connect more deeply with my daughter, and it helped my relationship with my husband, all those things. And then it's kind of evolved from there. And as I started healing myself over the years, I started to look more inward. I think that for me, fitness was a really great way to kind of like dip my toe into caring for myself. And then now I have a whole host of self love practices that I do. And I also do fit, and I also try and stay fit and do all those things as well. But I think that for a lot of women, like, fitness is a great entry point for that. So, yeah, that's kind of part of the journey of self-love, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, taking care of your physical body is definitely an act of self-love. Yeah.
And it's interesting, I think also for a lot of women, because we're told that we need to look a certain way, or that we need to, we are, it's encouraged that we get our bodies back and all those things. Like, I think that for a lot of us, that's a really great entry point. But I think that it's important to go beyond that. I have daily practices of journaling now, and meditation and breath work and all these like other really powerful things. But I had to kind of tip my toes into the water to get there to the place, because it was, of course, it's acceptable. Like, oh, you're going to the gym. Like, that seems to be like really acceptable. But then I had to say, like, well, I am allowed to take care of my physical body and meditate for 20 minutes a day, like, and do that. Like, that's not too much. Like, that is okay too. And recognizing that make listening to yourself, giving yourself rest. It's another thing. I work with several clients and helping them reach their goals as sort of like a self-love coach. And one of the biggest things that we work on is them allowing themselves to rest. So often we feel like we have to be productive. Like, oh, how many of us didn't nap when the baby was napping? Like, how many of us didn't, because you could do one more thing. So, and that becomes just a habit. And we feel like we have to earn our rest. And so I think that it's really important to recognize that rest is an act of revolution, and it's an act of like truly just an act of deep self-love. If your toddler was behaving in the way that your mind probably is some of those times, you would put them down for a nap. And yet we as women are so reluctant to say, I too deserve rest. I too deserve to sleep. And so I think it's really important that we look at the way we treat ourselves as the ways that we would treat others. Like treat yourself like you would treat your kids.
Yeah. And another thing to remember is that when we do treat ourselves with love, our kids are watching, they're learning how to treat themselves. And so it's a gift to give them in a few ways, not just them noticing what we're doing, but also because, like you said, you showed up like a different person with your daughter when you took care of yourself. So when we give ourselves that gift of love and care, we can show up and be the moms that we want to be and make those connections with our kids and create those like beautiful bonds, right?
Absolutely. And like, my daughter on Saturday nights takes a long bath every week, and she turns on her audiobooks and she uses like bath bombs, and she's like, I'm recharging. And so it's your kids are watching you, and they're seeing it. So when you take care of yourself and when you do that, it starts a reverberation like to them and to the rest of the world. It allows you to care for everyone else. But cliche, but put your oxygen mask on before everybody else is.
Yeah, it's really yeah, it's really good advice, and it's the opposite of what we're kind of like, I don't know what society tells us to do, right? So it can take a little bit to ease into this new way of thinking and treating yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned to me the value that self reflection has had on your motherhood journey. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel this fits really well into that idea of allowing for curiosity that we spoke about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's on their own journey. We all face our own challenges. And all of those challenges are opportunities for growth if we allow them to be. So I think one really beautiful practice to allow for that growth is self-reflection. Could you share how that's played a part on your journey and how we could use it to grow on the motherhood journey?
Yeah, self reflection is such an incredible tool. Like it is a wonderful tool for allowing us to take a moment and just see kind of what's going on in there. And for me, I have a daily practice of starting with morning pages, which comes from the book The Artist Way. So I spent before I turn on my phone, before I speak to anybody really. I take, I pull some type of a card, either an oracle or tarot card, and I go and I sit on my balcony and I write just free flow. And, some days and it started when I started this practice, it was like, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And then it kind of evolved from there. And now I don't necessarily go back and read them all the time, but I definitely am always amazed at with the point in which I start and where I end, and how it always reveals to me something that I didn't realize that I was thinking. And that's why it's so important to do that at the beginning of the day before you've allowed anything else to kind of come into your energy, and to do that because it's all me and it's all my thoughts. And so there's nothing wrong. It's not getting rated, but it really oftentimes gives me an idea of where I'm starting the day off. And then I end the day with some type of gratitude practice. For a long time, it was writing a gratitude list of 10 things every day. And I've moved more recently to thinking about the things in my life that I would miss if they were gone. Like, so if tomorrow these things disappeared, what would they be? Like, and so expressing gratitude for those things. And also when I do that, I think of how they came into my life and what purpose they're serving. So if I'm grateful for my home, why am I grateful for my home? I'm grateful for my home because I feel safe here, because I am with the people that I love, and I've been able to create this home for myself. And, it has all those things. So I think that it's really important. So I kind of bookmark my day with starting with the morning pages of self reflection and then ending it with the gratitude practices. And I think that that is a really wonderful way to get a really good sense of like what's going on, because as you do it, you'll start to notice there are different themes. Like for me, sometimes it ends up being like, I'm noticing that, certain weeks are more focused on work, or certain weeks I'm feeling more pressure around my marriage or my relationship, or sometimes it's something that I'm working through with my daughter that I'm noticing. And so all of these things allow me just a pause. And again, that pause is such a gift that you're giving yourself. You're showing yourself, I care enough about you to listen. It's no different than, I think, having a conversation with someone you care about and asking them what's going on in your brain, and really creating that space. And so that's what I think those practices are really important. And I find them to have been really life changing. you know
Oh, I love that you talked about the pause. I think we're so often always going. Like, and
Yeah.
even if we're not going, there's a screen on or something, right? There's no time to really like sit with what happened during our day unless we create that space. And morning pages are such a beautiful practice. And I think part of that too is just as moms, we have like running lists of things. Like putting it on paper helps me so much too. Just anything that's in my head, put it on paper. Um, Helps me let it go. Like that's a great thing. Like at the end of the day too, to like write down some of the things so that they're not in your head. Because you feel like you're going to forget them, and that creates this extra anxiety that you don't need, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it allows you to kind of go to bed reflecting on all the goodness, and that's important. Not that, it's not important to also recognize like the negative and to experience negative emotions. 'Cause that's another thing that I think we don't allow ourselves to do. Is I think often there's this culture of toxic positivity, and like, wanting to always like be happy, and but you can't affirmation yourself out of like the depths of like unprocessed emotion. It's like you have to actually acknowledge it, and to acknowledge it means that you need to create a safe container, and to create a safe container you need to demonstrate to yourself on a conscious and subconscious level that you care and that you actually appreciate yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and I like that you said that. So I think you're right. A lot of times we don't allow ourselves to feel the messy stuff, the uncomfortable stuff, or we don't allow, it's we try to hide it or something because it feels uncomfortable and it's maybe not acceptable. And so yeah, there's that. It's okay to feel the whole range of stuff, although that's easier said than done sometimes because it does feel hard and uncomfortable and messy and we're not used to it. But
Mhm.
when we allow ourselves to sit with and process that stuff, it goes away, it dissipates. um,
Mhm.
it's not forever, but when we do push it down, it's gonna bubble up in some form, like it's gonna need to be heard.
Yeah.
So when we're kind of proactive and lovingly curious about those things, yeah, we can listen for the messages in them, and um, yeah, that helps so much on the journey. That's part of that intuition and gut feelings and things that we have when we listen to those emotions. We can actually be like, oh, this is actually what I need to do, right? Like there's so much clarity that comes from listening to what's
Yeah.
going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It allows you to, your intuition starts to speak louder, and it also becomes easier. And it also again, like, as long as you're curious, there's always a possibility, because curiosity creates potential. And as long as there's potential, there's nothing you can't, survive or get out of, or like, curiosity is such an incredibly undervalued skill in our culture. We breed it, like we educate it out of children and in our school systems, and as they grow up, and as we grow, if you don't actively practice exercising that, the ability goes away. So it's a really wonderful practice to get into, because it just creates so much positivity and like possibilities. And I just think that's so important, to allow yourself that space as an adult.
Oh, for sure. And I think as moms, or at least for me, like I notice my kids are so curious. They are so present. They want to explore everything. And that's helped me a lot to
Mhm.
get back into that space.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I still find it challenging sometimes, but they are definitely really great examples of how to be really present and how to explore and be curious. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. A lot of, I think sometimes because of that hurried nature that you were talking about earlier, like we always feel like we have to be going, we have to be, how many times have you told your child, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up? It's constant. And when my daughter was around 3, when kids start asking why all the time, I decided I was going to lean into it. I was like, "You know what? We're going to find out why toothpaste is green. We're going to find out why XYZ." And I would follow her down that rabbit hole. And I still do this. Like she'll come and she'll ask me questions for things. I'm like, okay, let's figure it. I'm also a children's librarian, so that that helps a lot as well. Um, but what that does is now when I explore something and I follow her down these rabbit holes, and I didn't see them as like, oh, this is something I have to deal with. Like I don't have time to explain. I really leaned into it. It helped to activate my own curiosity. And then, so now a lot of the times, like we'll get to a place and I'm like, okay, well, you now know all the information that I know about this topic. And I feel satisfied. If you would like to continue, be my guest. You know how to use like books and the internet. You can find out more information, but I feel satisfied with where we are on why Pringles are shaped this way or whatever it is. Like, and so it's really created a beautiful connection between the two of us, and it's a great practice. So I also think like you can turn different parts of your mothering into self-care practices if you allow for a reframe. And that's what I try and do.
Absolutely, yeah. Reframe is a great word. So yeah, to we homeschool, and so I feel what you're saying. Like there is so much learning that I have, have had through the experience of homeschooling with my kids. There, so many questions, so many things we've like explored together, and it can be so fun. Like if we let ourselves lean into it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about like support and asking for help. There's even a saying about how it takes a village, right, to raise children. So knowing that we don't have to do it alone and it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. I used to feel that way. I used to feel that if I asked for help, I was, less than supermom and it was a weakness. And so I had to shift that belief so that I could get the support that I needed. Um, and you even talked about how you and your husband would trade off so that you could get your time for yourself. And we all need some support. So how can we open up a conversation with partners or caregivers so that we can begin to ask for the support that we need?
So my journey through this has actually been quite interesting. So when I had my daughter, my husband was the primary like income earner in our house. He owned his own business. He traveled a lot, and just by default, I took on a lot of that. And uh, he he never really understood, I think, a lot of the things that I was going through. And at times it was a struggle I felt like I could ask for certain things, but in other ways I couldn't. And so it was an active like baby steps, like asking like little bit by little bit. And then interestingly enough, we decided several years ago that we wanted to move from Ohio to Colorado. And when we did that, I found a job, and the job that I found working in the library was able to pay for my move, but they needed me to move in January. And my daughter was in the second grade. My husband owned a business. We owned a home, and we knew that we wanted to move, and this was where we wanted to move. And so we had to have a really deep conversation about like, okay, how can we do this? Because we can't just upend our life, but this opportunity is too good to pass up. So I actually moved across the country 6 months before my husband and daughter did. And that experience transformed our marriage and my family, because until that point, he didn't really have an understanding of all that I did. And then when they ended up moving here, he actually is the one who he realized that he loved doing all of like the kids stuff. Like he loves kids' birthday parties. That man loves the kids' birthday party. He loves to know all the parents on the sports teams. I do not find joy in those activities at all. Like I feel like my zone of genius is something very different. But because I didn't ask him for help, and I didn't ask, and because I didn't articulate all those things for a number of years, what it did was it actually took away the opportunity for him to step into the possibility that he might enjoy that. We had defaulted to these stereotypical roles of, me doing, the mom thing and him, doing that. And what I realized and thinking back, when they moved here, we had to have really honest conversations. And those honest conversations, it was amazing. And I think that a lot of women underestimate, and they assume they know what their partner wants. Assuming that they're in a heterosexual relationship, like they assume that they know that men don't want to do that. And so what I encourage everyone that I know is to not do that, and to explore the possibility, like, what if your husband actually does really enjoy that and you're taking that away from him? And that is absolutely what my experience was. So I did it the long way. I don't think that you have to do it that way. And I think that the takeaway is, don't assume that you know what your partner wants just because that's the way that it started. The way that your child rearing and all of your home is, it doesn't have to stay that way. It can change and evolve. You just have to be brave enough and find, again, that self love to ask and to say, like, okay, this is important to me. And the first step of that is getting clear on what you want. And when my husband and daughter came here, I was super clear, like, listen, we can't go back to that way that it was. I can't do that. And I'm grateful every day that my partner and I were able to have those honest conversations. So while they're hard and uncomfortable, it's just like feeling those hard and uncomfortable feelings that we, avoid. When you go, that if you're familiar with the hero's journey, when we think about, in order for heroes to get the thing that they want, they often have to go through that deep, dark cave. That deep, dark cave is often the uncomfortable conversations. And so I encourage women to first understand what they want and what they need, and then to recognize, like, I need to be brave enough for myself, because there's no award for who suffers the most. Like, there's no award at the end for being the mom who did it all. Nobody's going to care that you did it all at the end of the day. So,
Yes, so I love that you talked about, so it was a great perspective, first of all, like you don't know until you ask what the other person is excited about or willing to do. And not even just, your spouse, but maybe other, people in your family. Like usually they actually really want to help you, and we don't always ask, and they don't know what we need until we ask. So that communication is so important, and getting really clear on what you need. It's really hard to ask for what you need if you don't even know. So that's a really, really important step too. I love that you brought that up.
yeah.
Okay, so you've been on this amazing journey. You've discovered so much. And if you could go back to when you first became a mom, what would you share with yourself?
To relax. To relax. To allow and to relax, to lean into surrender more. And I'm not, I think it's easy as you grow on this journey of self-discovery and self-love and all those things. I think it's easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I wish I did it differently. But, like, we don't expect fourth graders to know calculus. Like, we would never get upset because a child doesn't know advanced things. And really, again, going back to that self-love and just to allowing yourself permission to, like, I did the best I could. And so while I would tell her to relax, I also appreciate everything that she went through, because that's what got me here.
Oh, okay. So I definitely resonate with that word surrender, because so much of my early motherhood experience was me pushing against what was and not surrendering to the moment. I was trying so hard and it was so exhausting. It was an exhausting way to live. So I love that you said that. Um, yeah, that's beautiful. And acknowledging that what we went through for a reason, and it made us who we are. So um, that's also really beautiful. So I loved this conversation so much. Can you let us know where we can find you online?
Yeah. You can find me. I'm mostly on Instagram. I spend most of my internet time there. And it's AllisonM.Alexander there. And my website is women'sintuitivecoach.com. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching, and I offer, like, free I call them speed dates, for 15 minutes of, like, free conversation, where if I can't help you, I have an endless amount of resources that I can help you with, and send you on your way. I love like I said, I'm a librarian. So at heart, I love sharing resources and information. That's my deep passion, and connecting people with their needs to the thing that can help them. So if I can't help you, I can find somebody who can. So yeah.
That's awesome. I will include those in the show notes. And yeah, are there any last pieces of wisdom you'd like to share or leave us with?
If you feel like you need to do something, if you keep feeling like something is important to you, don't ignore it. And that's I think a really big, if you're feeling like, I really think I should go to this retreat, or I really feel like I should take a break or whatever, like get curious about it and allow yourself that. And I think that's something that we could all do more of. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story and all of your tips and wisdom with us today. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you and get to know you more.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me, Mama. I'm over here smiling from ear to ear and giving you a big virtual hug. I love spending this time with you. You are amazing for showing up and carving out this space to nourish your soul. If you are loving the Soul Care Mom podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And if you are ready to start your mornings feeling calm and energized, get the Kickstart Your Calm Morning Guide, a self-care morning ritual for moms, as a free gift when you join the Soul Care Mom community. Head over to soulcaremom.com/kickstart and enter your email address to get your free gift and start feeling like a calm mom today. Sending you so much love, Mama.